We are back. Welcome into the Super Will Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Will, joined by my co-host Tyler. Tyler, how you doing today? We had a little rebrand. I know the people have missed us. We're already an hour late too, so we're off to a great start. But how you doing?
Great. I'm just happy to be back. Like you said, great start. I also didn't know when I should jump in, so I already messed that one up too. But just happy to talk about sports.
Knocking off the cobwebs. Yeah, basically. So this show is going to be very similar to the show that we did last football season. It'll just be me and Tyler for right now, but we're going to have kind of a round table of guests. It'll, depending on what we're talking about for the week, hop in and give some valuable insight. Try and get some actual people from college football media to hop in here too. And then the show will have a Bama lean to it, obviously, as two Bama grads. Woohoo. We're going to talk a lot about Alabama and the SEC, but I can't speak for Tyler, but I know myself, I'm trying to become not less of a Bama fan, but kind of just more of a college football fan as a whole. Obviously, I mean, I've got like a Penn State sweatshirt on, but I think when it boils down to it, I'm a college football fan who also just happens to like Alabama and Penn State.
Yeah, and I've always been more of an NFL guy. I've been getting more into like just general college football throughout the years as well. Just growing up in an area where there was no college football, but I'm rocking my Bama player jersey this week's Calvin Ridley. I'm gonna have a different one most weeks until I run out. So, but yeah, I'm excited. So what do you want to talk about first?
I think the best thing we can do is kind of get the serious stuff out of the way. Obviously, we're in kind of a weird period too, where there's not too much information. You've got the season, I think, 40 days away. Who's counting? Me. I'm counting. So the season's still a little bit of a ways away, and we were actually planning on starting the podcast in August, but I figured it'd be better to kind of just recap. Like this show, we're going to recap some of the bigger stories and kind of talk about things to watch for the upcoming season. But we're going to start with Pat Fitzgerald. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the Northwestern situations going on. Northwestern fired Pat Fitzgerald days after details surfaced alleging graphic instances of hazing within the program. Initially, he was going to be suspended without pay for a couple weeks, and then the school newspaper took the story and kind of rolled it out more for the public, and there were a lot of things in there that were just flat out disturbing. So two former players provided details of the hazing, which a lot of it was sexual nature. It's hard to talk about this because it's just so kind of crazy to me that we're even having to talk about it. Basically, though, if a player was selected for running, they would be restrained by a group of 8 to 10 upperclassmen dressed in various purge-like masks, who would then begin dry humping the victim in a dark locker room. Just weird stuff like that. I'll start with you, Tyler. Kind of gave your thoughts on it. I know I'm going to try not to go down the rabbit hole of hazing in general when it comes to fraternities and just locker rooms, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on it before I went off the deep end.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one, super weird, and two, just like kind of completely unacceptable for, especially, these guys are college students playing football at a pretty high level. Like, that's something that, like the teams are going to have light hazing. I know that might be like a little controversial to say, but like high school, you're going to, but like nothing, I don't know. I want to like watch my words because I'm not advocating for anything serious at all. Like, making up a nickname for someone or something like that. Or like being like, oh dude, why'd you have to make us run? But like cornering someone in a dark locker room and then like doing all types of perverted, like messed up stuff is just, it's strange. And it's also kind of interesting to me that stuff like that stays hidden for so long. I mean, it took a lot of guts for the two players to come out, even though, I think they're anonymous right now, to come out and say something. And also, I do want to say real quick, I think it took a lot of guts for the students at the student newspaper to run with that story, because I mean, there's one thing that like colleges cherish more than anything in a lot of places, and it's their football team, right? So like publishing anything that's gonna severely, harm the football team like that, I feel like they're gonna get a lot of flack from. Uh, I mean, I feel like a lot of like alumni or like older fans. I would like to hope that at least like the college age students there understand why it's important to publish this, but still, that's something that you're going to get a lot of flack for. The person that like published that article and the newspaper as a whole. So like, props to them for having the guts to run with the story.
Yeah, I agree with you. It takes a lot of guts to decide when you hear something like that and you get that kind of information to make the decision to go public with the information, because like you stated, a lot of boosters and just various people that are close to the program would do probably anything in their power for that information to not get out. And so for that information to get out, and then for the newspaper to take it a step further, props, because I mean, I don't think you can't sweep that stuff under the rug. It has to be brought up. And like you talked about, light hazing is one thing, like, making a guy carry your shoulder pads. We see that in the NFL, or when they make the rookies pick up the tabs or pick up the checks for the dinner. That's one thing. But I've never understood the crazy hazing, just really in general, not even just with sports. When I hear stories, I mean, we both went to Alabama. It's a big fraternity school. I don't want to get too much into that, but just hazing with fraternities and sororities. And I think to a certain extent, it's ridiculous. So I don't really know. I guess I'm assuming we'll figure out more details with it. But right now, that's kind of all the information that we have about it. And just reading about the quotes from the players just seems like it's made up, because it's hard to imagine and envision any program doing that. But I do think it kind of raises the question. I'm sure that, let's just call a spade a spade. Northwestern isn't a great football school. They're not one of the bigger football schools. So it makes me wonder, are some of the bigger schools, is the hazing worse, or could it go, the other way where, hey, these players are playing at Alabama, Georgia, Miami, some of these other schools that are in the conversation for, being high in the college football rankings or even the playoffs. Do they take it more seriously, and is it not an issue there? That's kind of the question that came to my mind. Is, are there other schools that are going to get in trouble, or is this kind of just a Northwestern thing?
Yeah, and I'd like to imagine, when you say that the more like football oriented schools like your Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, I think that my immediate reaction was that they would take it more seriously, and that it's almost like a business at that point. I mean, you go to Ohio State, you go to Alabama, you go to Georgia, any of those schools. I don't know why I keep listing them all. You get the point. But
yeah, I said Miami, and I was like, wait, that isn't really. They're not in the. I'm a little early on the Miami being in the playoffs. But yeah.
But anyway, my point is that you go to them with the expectation that it'll help further you, like eventually end up in the pros. So I think that they take it seriously, and they kind of have to take it seriously to maintain that reputation as like a school that will help you get to the next level. And also, like, I know Nick Saban, for example, is not going to let that go on in his locker room. I mean, who knows? Knock on wood. Maybe there's crazy hazing scandals from Alabama that are going to come out. But in my opinion, I don't think any of the big name coaches like that would let anything happen. And I know that Pat Fitzgerald is a big name in like Northwestern history, but he's not, he's not like that top echelon like coach, right? So
yeah, and that kind of transitions into our next point. So obviously Pat Fitzgerald's out. There's been a lot of rumblings, rumors, whatever you want to call it, about who's going to fill his place. I know Coach Orgeron, Coach O's been out of the coaching for what seems probably like 2 or 3 years, maybe longer than that. Obviously, kind of rode off into the sunset after that perfect year with LSU in 2019. Or you would think he would have, but the next year they were awful and they ended up firing him. He said that he would be interested in the position if they were to approach him about it. And then also I saw Tommy Rees has kind of been a name that's been thrown around. We'll start with Coach O and then kind of move on to Reese. What do you think about Coach O potentially coaching Northwestern?
I think he's a like kind of high floor, low ceiling guy, and which is okay. I know that's kind of stupid to say, considering he literally won a national championship, which is like
with
a
really talented roster of players.
Right. I don't think that was coach.
I
think a lot of coaches would have won the championship that year with that LSU roster, and like Joe Brady calling the offense and Joe Burrow and like all them, and I think that he's a decent coach though, and if you're trying to like rebuild a respectable football program, he is pretty well respected as a coach. He just wasn't getting it done at the LSU standard, but I don't think the Northwestern standard is the same as the LSU standard. And so I think he would be a fine coach. I think he's one of those hires that you go where he's kind of boring in a way, but boring is what you need after a big scandal like this, right? Like you just want a little bit of stability. And then, like, to be honest, it's not like Northwestern is really competing for natties every year anyway. Didn't they play in the Big Ten championship like 2 years ago? Or was that?
It was a little bit longer than 2 years ago, but yeah, they did fairly recently. But
yeah, like so they had a couple like good competitive years, but even then, that's like playing in the opposite bracket of the Big Ten as Ohio State and Michigan. So
yeah, and I think that Coach O is just almost too big of a name for them. I mean, it doesn't make much sense for him to come in and be the coach when they don't have a lot of talent on the roster. I mean, he's used to being at programs. USC, he was interim coach there. Obviously, 2019 LSU, that roster was loaded with talent. So unless he's really just in some dire need for some money or something, because they would throw the bag at him, I don't really see that making much sense. And then with Tommy Rees, this is a guy who's been a GA at Northwestern, so you do have a little bit of history with him there. But I'm sure that he's excited about the opportunity he has in front of him at Alabama with all the talent that we have here. I mean, it would kind of just be, other than becoming a head coach, which is something that all coaches aspire to be of a program, and that's as bad as they've been, Northwestern is still a Power 5 program in the Big Ten Conference. I don't think he would want to take that job because he was just at Notre Dame as their quarterbacks coach. He's kind of leveling up trajectory-wise, becoming the OC at Alabama. So, I mean, also the season's right around the corner too. So that would be, for a young, inexperienced coach like him, to go to a program and basically be thrown into fire. I think that would be, honestly, I would think that Coach O would be more likely to be there than Tommy Rees would be, just because whoever steps into that program is going to need to be a coach that's older, that can take on the burden of the boosters and all the stuff that comes along with taking over for Fitzgerald and the dumpster fire they have going on there.
Yeah, and like, I don't know, I feel like Rees just seems like a name that it's like, oh, he's an Alabama coordinator that has some loose like ties. So that's why, like, but I also think that he needs a couple years to kind of prove himself before he gets, really considered for that head coaching role.
Had that resume.
Right. And like, he was a good quarterbacks coach, but you look at like Notre Dame's offense the last couple of years, even not just last year alone, and they're kind of just okay. They never really like blew you away. And I know like their entire what identity, gosh, that's the word. Their entire identity, especially after hiring their new head coach, who is their defensive coordinator, is more of a defensive team. But I think that Tommy Rees is going to need a couple of years as a successful coordinator running an offense before he gets considered for the serious next level thing. I mean, it's kind of like Sark, where I know Sark wasn't the same, right? Because he already had a head coaching stint, but he needed to spend a couple of years at Alabama to prove that he has what it takes to be a head coach.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Orgeron took over for Sark at USC. I could have that completely. Maybe it was Kiffin or something. Maybe I'm getting my alternate universes, my different timelines mixed up. But yeah, for sure. So that's definitely something to watch. Like I said, not much going on football wise, so that was kind of like a nice little news dump that we got at the beginning of this week. Before we talk about, we're going to talk about the Heisman watch list and kind of which players we think are going to win and who could be overrated and underrated. We're going to throw in a little fun little segment here, just talk about some things going on. Tyler, did you see Jalen Daniels' $50,000 chain that he had at Big 12 Media Days?
I did not, and that's kind of ridiculous. Actually, there's a link in here. So
Yeah. See, I'm a good host. I threw in a little link for you just for reference.
My lord. And
it's basically an Apple Watch. Like an Apple Watch without the band on it and just a bunch of diamonds.
Yeah, just completely bedazzled in diamonds. That's crazy to me as well, because like Jalen Daniels is a decent quarterback. But
yeah, he was on fire. I mean, I remember people were hyping up the Kansas State matchup last year because they're both like 6-0, and it was like, oh my gosh, Kansas has a football team that can actually win a game. And Daniels had a decent year last year. He's like 18 touchdowns and 4 picks before he had his shoulder injury cut his season short. But yeah, it is kind of ridiculous to see a quarterback who's not really a household name just be strutting around with that. Hey, you got the NIL money now. You can throw an Apple Watch with diamonds on your necklace.
Right, and I guess that was my point, was how much do you think he gets from NIL as a like mid-tier quarterback? Because that is kind of crazy to think about. A couple of years ago, that would have been a major recruiting violation. Like the NCAA would be all over that if they see a player wearing a 50.
Yeah, those guys were wearing that in their apartments and dorms. They weren't wearing it in public at their conferences media days.
I mean, he earned it though, and he's playing at a college level pretty well.
So yeah, for sure. I don't have any issues with it. I mean, a lot of people have their gripes about NIL, but the way I see it, I mean, if there's local businesses that are willing to give these players money, I mean, especially like Daniels, he probably won't be an NFL quarterback. So, I mean, while you might as well strike while the iron's hot and get as much money as you can in these deals. So, that's just the way I feel about it.
That's the only thing that kind of worries me, just not from a college football like standpoint at all, but for Jalen Daniels. I mean, you're making all this money from the NIL, but if you don't get drafted, you don't go on to have a pretty long NFL career. Blowing $50K on a chain is kind of I want to say kind of irresponsible. I know it's just one purchase, right? But if someone is blowing $50K on a chain at like 19, 20 years old, however old he is, I don't think that's going to be the only crazy purchase. So I'm just kind of worried that
it's the tip of the iceberg.
Right, exactly. And not just for Jalen Daniels, but for everyone that's making a bag off the NIL. You also need to be responsible with your money. I know Shaquille O'Neal is one of the most famous examples of players that were successful with their money, invested a bunch, and now owns a bunch of business chains, has a bunch of business ventures. But early in his career too, he was blowing money like crazy and went broke for a while before he finally saw a financial advisor. So I'm happy that the kids are getting paid for their talent, but also, I'd be a little careful.
Yeah, I think one thing that would help them out a lot, and maybe they already have this in place, is kind of like you touched on with Shaquille O'Neal, just everybody, each one of these players having their own financial advisor telling them not just ways, just like how to save their money, but how to kind of diversify it. All that stuff. We just went down a rabbit hole, but next up,
I know this is the most like boomer.
You
darn kids, stop spending your money.
Exactly. Yeah, must be nice to have 50,000 and just throw on a chain. Heisman watch list. Caleb Williams, still favored at plus 500, followed by Jaden Daniels plus 1,000, Michael Penix Jr. plus 1,200. Quinn Ewers 1,200, Jordan Travis 1,600. I could keep going on the list, but I don't want to bore anybody. Do you want to say that both Bo Nix, J.J. McCarthy, and Drake May are all tied at plus 1,800. It says plus 18,000 on there. That's wrong. Plus 1,800 according to FanDuel. Who on this list intrigues you? Who's overrated, underrated, and who do we think will end up winning the award? Obviously, a lot of Pac-12 guys on here, which is the first thing that kind of stands out to me.
So going into this, I wanted to say Michael Penix is a dark horse, but he's not even really a dark horse just because he's the third best.
Oh, you're gonna love my answer.
Yeah, you're probably gonna have him way overrated, I know, but I think that he runs a very successful offense, and the only question is if he can do it at the same level he did last year, because not everyone has their Joe Burrow season, I want to call it, where they're mediocre for their career and then have one really good season. Not everyone can carry that into the rest of their career. So if he keeps it at the same level, he's good. I think it's going to be kind of crazy sounding, but overrated in my opinion is Caleb Williams, just because only one player ever has won 2 Heismans. So, and I'm not quite sure that Caleb Williams, as good as he is, he's the next so and so. He's the next Pat Mahomes. He's the next whatever. None of them won the Heisman twice. So
I agree with you for Caleb. Obviously, he'll probably have the same year he had last year, incredible year. But people are more drawn to the hot name on the list, the name that you're not going to expect. We all know what Caleb Williams is. We all know he's going to be the number 1 pick in next year's draft, barring anything crazy. And so when I look at this list, you're kind of looking at a Jordan Travis at plus 1,600. Or a Drake May or a Bo Nix. People want somebody new, and a lot of this is dependent on how the team will do. So with Drake May, obviously he's an incredible quarterback, but you don't know how great UNC is going to be this year. And I think the voters, this is not how it necessarily should be done, but if you're leading your team to the playoffs or you're making a deep run and you're having a great year, you're more likely to win the Heisman. And so I think that eliminates a couple guys on here. Quinn Ewers, been a household name since he was at Ohio State. Texas will probably be pretty darn good this year, but I don't see them in the playoff conversation. Michael Penix Jr., I think, is an interesting name to watch. They're going to throw the hell out of the ball this year, so he's going to put up good stats. But I think if I had to pick 2 names on here of quarterbacks who I can see leading their teams to the playoffs, it's going to be Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix. And I know there's the meme, Bo Nix has really done it. This is the year. He's grown. He's learned. We've all seen that meme. And it always makes me laugh when I see it. But you look at a guy like Bo Nix last year, put up some really good stats. Obviously, Oregon, in standard fashion like they do, find a way to lose a couple games, but his stats were really great. I think he excelled kind of in the change of scenery. I think the pressure for him at Auburn was a little much, and he had some big plays there. He had some really bad plays there, but I think that change of scenery did him wonders last year, and he will kind of continue to build on that this year. And as the Oregon, Penn State, Alabama, blah, 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 blah fan everybody likes to say about me, I can kind of see Oregon taking control of that conference and surprisingly kind of winning that conference over USC. Offensively, USC is going to be great with Caleb Williams. They got great receivers, so they're going to put up a lot of points, but I don't really see USC's defense, doing all that great. We know how Lincoln Riley defenses in general aren't the best. He has the same defensive coordinator from Oklahoma. Not sure why he made that hire, but I think Bo Nix in Oregon, their offense will be great. Their defense will also be great, and I think the recipe is there for him to win the Heisman because you got a French playoff team with a quarterback putting up numbers. And then Jaden Daniels. LSU is going to be very great this year. A lot of people think they kind of peaked last year and they're going to come back down to earth this year, but I see them kind of giving an Alabama a run for their money in the conference, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were in the playoffs. The only thing with Jaden Daniels that makes me a little nervous is that I don't see them throwing the ball all that much. Um, like I see them running more with Daniels and then obviously the other running backs that they have. And I think Nix is more likely to put up not only impressive passing numbers, but also rushing numbers. And I think with Daniels, it'll be more just one-dimensional with the running aspect.
Yeah.
That was super long-winded. I kind of just I feel like I'm always just going off on tangents, and you're probably just like, is he ever going to stop talking? But the Heisman stuff is always fascinating to me because it's not just, straightforward. There's so many different things that go into it. Team's performance, playoff expectations. And I think people don't even consider that stuff. They just think, oh, Drake May's got these stats. He should win the Heisman. Well, no, it's not that simple, unfortunately.
Yeah. And also, I do want to say about Caleb Williams, too, is that you said the offense is going to stay the same level as it did last year. And obviously, they had a good record. But they had so many games where it just seemed like the offense was stagnant for three quarters, and then in the fourth quarter, they would come back and win by like 4 points. I don't know. I watched a lot of Jordan Addison videos after he got drafted by the Minnesota Vikings, and in a lot of his games last year, you look at the score and it would be, them losing by 7-10 points, and then they would come back at the very end. And I also remember some of my friends and I do like a pick'em pool, and every single week I'd bet against USC because I was not a believer, and I'd be following the score the entire game and almost the entire game. I would look like I was a genius, and then I would end up not being a genius. But I feel like there's got to be some regression on that as well. You can't win every close game every time. So I don't know how well their offense is going to do this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if the two players that I would pick, if I was a betting man, I would pick Bo Nix and probably Michael Penix. Like I said with Daniels, I think he'll have good numbers. I don't think his passing numbers will be good enough. I mean, because we know he's going to run the ball. We know he's a running quarterback. I mean, he beat Alabama by doing that. But I don't think he brings enough to the table with his arm for the Heisman voters. But that's the beauty. I mean, there's names on this list, too, that could come out of nowhere that I don't even have on our little Google Doc sheet. Like from Penn State, Drew Aller, let's say he comes in. But, yeah, no Penn State lane there.
Yeah. So you got the Oregon quarterback, you got the Penn State quarterback. I really think if Jalen Milroe has a year, he might have a chance.
Yeah.
Or Ty Simpson if he starts, whoever it is.
Yeah, no, but Heisman will be interesting, and those odds too have really just kind of been all over the place, changing pretty much by the week. I mean, I checked this not too long ago, probably about a month ago, and it was Caleb Williams, Penix, Nix, May. They were all up there, and now it's Williams, Daniels, Penix, Ewers. So I mean, it changes by the week. We're in the off season; people are changing their minds. And kind of before we move on, the only other name on here that kind of intrigues me is Jordan Travis. A lot of people are hyping up Florida State this year. I think they have one of the best receiving corps in the country, definitely one of the tallest. And I think Jordan Travis could also be a guy that I could see winning the Heisman. But how do you feel about Jordan Travis?
I don't think he puts up crazy enough stats to win the Heisman. I mean, he plays well and they win the games, but
he's efficient. He's very efficient. Right. I don't think he's going to give you like a 400-yard passing game with 3 touchdowns. And I'd love to be wrong because I think college football is better as a sport when we have Florida State, Miami. There's my second Miami reference for 30 minutes of the show. So there you go. USC, these schools that haven't really been all that great recently. I think I'd love to see this sport be more balanced. Hell, even Texas. Like I want these schools to excel because we're so used to, as college football fans, seeing them be good. So I I agree with you in the sense that his stats aren't going to be crazy, but Florida State as a team will probably be pretty solid this year and could win the ACC.
That's exactly kind of how I feel. Good, they're going to be a good team, and he's going to have some good performances. I mean, they beat LSU right this last year. Was it
They
LSU?
did.
Yeah,
That was a great game. That was like the first game of the college football season on Labor Day weekend. I was like, really set the tone for the season right here with this one.
Yeah, and so Jordan Travis is going to have those performances, but I don't think, I don't even think in that game where he played a great game, he had crazy stats.
Yeah, he really didn't. Quarterback battles at the Blue Bloods. Say that 4 times fast. Obviously, Alabama is who we're going to start with because, we're biased, obviously, with our school. But there's a bunch of schools on here that are intriguing to watch. Obviously, with Alabama, you've got Jalen Milroe versus Tyler Simpson. Why did I put Ty Simpson? Jalen Milroe versus Ty Simpson / Tyler Buchner.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
I wanted to ask you, before I give my opinion, I wanted to ask you, do you think that Tyler Buchner actually has a legitimate chance to win the starting spot, or do you think they just brought him in because he's familiar with what Tommy Rees wants to do and they wanted another quarterback that could practice?
That's a great question, and the answer is a little complicated but also simple. I'm going to simplify it. I think they brought him in because he's familiar with Tommy Rees's offense, and they're not sure about the other 2 guys. I think both Milroe and Simpson have shown that they can be the QB1 for Alabama, but the question with them is, can they consistently make plays? They're both going to show flashes. I mean, we saw it in the A day. Both of them are capable of making big plays, but you need a consistent quarterback. You don't need somebody who's just going to have an 80-yard run in the next drive, throw an interception or fumble the ball. And I think Buchner was brought in. I mean, I think it tells you all you need to know that they brought Buchner in. Neither one of those guys transferred. So if Simpson and Milroe weren't confident that they were going to win the job, they would have left. They would have said, they brought in Buchner. He's going to be the guy for Rees. But I think the fact that all 3 of them are there battling it out just means that it's really anyone's game. I'm still going to say that I think Milroe has the edge just because he's got a little bit longer in the program, and I think he fits schematically what they're trying to do. Ty Simpson can run the ball, but I think Jalen Milroe is an absolute freak athlete, and if you're pairing him with McClellan and some of those freshman running backs that are talented and Roydell Williams, I think Alabama's going to run the hell out of the ball this year. And I think Milroe, size-wise, is a guy that you're not worried about him getting hurt because he's just such a big dude and running is his strength. He does need to throw the ball better. I mean, you can't just have him run the ball all the time. And so that's something that I think they're working on with him, and they want to see improvement. But I think that's I think if you can get a little bit, just a small improvement with him throwing the ball, it's enough for him to be your starting quarterback.
See, I'm going to go opposite.
I like it. We need some disagreements.
Yeah, based on what I saw, and I know it's just one scrimmage, you can't take anything away with it, but also based on what I saw last year, right? And again, players develop. Last year isn't the best kind of measuring stick, but through everything I've seen so far in the summer, I think that Ty Simpson looked better throwing to the number 2s than Jalen Milroe did to the number 1s. It's just being a great athlete, and he's an incredible athlete. Being a great athlete is good till you get to a certain level, but we had that problem 2017, for example, with Jalen Hurts in the national championship, where he just wasn't a good enough thrower to get past the defense that can stop the run. As soon as you meet a stout run defense, you're in trouble if your quarterback can't throw the ball. And again, I'm not an insider. I haven't seen Jalen Milroe practice. I only saw the one scrimmage. But
that Twitter clip of him throwing the ball.
Yeah, but even just in that one scrimmage, like I said, he had the number one receivers playing with him, and he just had. It looked like they had very little chemistry. It looked like he's had struggles on the basic throws. He has an absolute cannon. He could hit the deep throws, but he would just sail everything that was close or required any type of touch. So I think that Ty Simpson has. I have more confidence in him. I don't know if Nick Saban's going to feel the same way. He obviously has historically shown he values experience. Very hesitant. I mean, freshmen do play at Bama, but they have to earn it, and he's more hesitant to play. I know that Ty Simpson's not a freshman, but also from a final note, kind of on a more selfish level, if Ty Simpson wins the job this year, we have continuity for at least one more year as a quarterback. But if Jalen Milroe wins the job, has a crazy good year, that'd be good for us. But also, he might be gone for the draft. So,
Yeah, and I think with this team this year, the only question marks I have are quarterback, which is obviously a large question mark, and then receiver. But I think this team has a chance to be one of the better Alabama teams we've had. Just, I mean, from a deep standpoint, they have I think it's three of the top 10 recruiting classes of all time, not just Alabama, are on this roster this year and walking around that campus as we speak. So you look at their secondary, you've got Caleb Downs, you've got Kool-Aid McKinstry, who's going to be a top 10 pick. Even though you lose Will Anderson, you still have Dallas Turner and literally half a dozen other 5-stars on that defensive line. So I think the offensive line too will be better. Running back group is deep. So kind of like I said earlier, if you can just get average quarterback play from one of these guys, I don't care who it is. I really don't. I don't care if it's Simpson, if it's Milroe, if it's Buckner. They just need somebody who's going to not make a lot of mistakes and makes, plays here and then, and just be a team player. Really, they don't need a Bryce Young. They would like to have a Bryce Young type season from one of these quarterbacks, or a Mac Jones, or a Tua, or a Jalen Hurts. But I don't think you need that from this team. I think this team is going to be a lot more balanced. We're going to kind of get back to that Bama standard. You're not going to have guys making bonehead penalties and scheme errors, guys out of position. I think this Alabama team is going to be a vintage Nick Saban team. So they just need a quarterback who can be a game manager and make the occasional big play when needed, which is easier said than done. But
also you said they don't need to have a Bryce Young year, but we, knock on wood, might have our next Bryce Young type player coming in next year. And Julian Sayin just won the Elite 11 competition, and I think some of the ranking services, I don't know how else to say that, but they I don't know what they're called, you know what I mean, the database,
those guys that do the damn rankings,
the dang rankers, I know some of them have pushed him to like QB1 in the recruiting class, and he looks really good. So if all else fails, maybe freshman Julian Sayin is the answer. But I do want to say real quick too, don't want to go too far on an Alabama tangent, but you said that quarterback and receivers are your two big question marks. And I'll do you one further. I think that coordinators are my number one question mark. I think that a good coordinator can hide a bad quarterback, and that's been shown, time and time again with all first-round quarterbacks that get drafted and then end up not panning out. And it's just, it's because they had a really good scheme. So in college football, a good coordinator can hide the deficiencies of their team. And then on defense, hopefully, Kevin Steele, awesome name, by the way. That's like an action hero name.
Kevin Steele.
Right, exactly. He hopefully comes in and at least can make an adjustment to maybe after like the third touchdown, understand that DeMarco Hellum shouldn't be covering, fast receivers one-on-one. So I think that's the two biggest things. I mean, listen, I defended Pete all year, and I still will stand by he's, I think, a little bit better than people gave him credit for. But he did struggle at times. There are certain games where there was pretty obvious from my couch coordinator position that I happily employ.
Yeah,
pretty
you're sitting there
obvious.
with a beer and some chips, and you're like,
Yeah,
"What are we
like
doing?"
oh, the quarterback throws an interception. Look at this idiot.
You got your mouth full of nachos,
Right,
and you're
like I wouldn't have thrown that. But for my couch coordinator position, there was a couple really obvious adjustments that he should have made last year that he just didn't. And so hopefully we'll get back to the more physical, kind of stout Alabama defenses of the past.
for sure. And kind of moving on, I mean, really, you look at this list. You just talked about Alabama. You've got Georgia, and you have Ohio State. 3 teams that, I mean, you had Alabama. We talked about all the quarterbacks, the quarterback run they've had. Georgia had like 18 years with Stetson Bennett. Ohio State had Justin Fields and Dwayne Haskins. This year is kind of unprecedented in the sense that a lot of these big name schools have big question marks at the quarterback position.
Right.
Georgia, Carson Beck and Brock Vandagriff. That's kind of where the competition is with them. I mean, presumably Carson Beck is going to be the starting quarterback for them, but also Vandagriff is a highly touted 5-star guy. So I think they're kind of in the same position that we are. Obviously, coming off 2 back-to-back national championships must be nice, and so they're kind of just sitting over there whistling in Athens, looking at the 5-star quarterbacks they've got behind them after a walk-on just won them 2 national championships. But still, they don't really know what to expect. It doesn't matter that Stetson was a walk-on and these guys are 5-stars, because as much as I hate to say it, part of the reason that made Stetson Bennett so great is kind of what we were talking about, what we wanted to see from the Alabama quarterbacks. Just a guy that's going to consistently not turn the ball over. He's not going to do too much, but, you know, when you need to make a play, I mean, Stetson Bennett would rip off a little 15-yard run.
Yeah,
and so, I mean, nobody expected anything from him. Sometimes these guys that are the highly touted dudes that you expect to, you know, throw the ball 70 yards are the ones that make the crucial mistakes in a big game. So Georgia, with one of these guys, I'm sure will still be a really good program. And then Ohio State, really, really tough to replace CJ Stroud. I don't think got enough credit at Ohio State. I mean, this year they basically took Georgia to the wire, lost the game on a field goal. He had a really good game.
Yeah,
and a lot of people counted him out in that game too.
Yeah, if JSN stayed healthy too, I think they win that game. So.
Yeah.
Or, sorry, Marvin. Was it
Marvin Harrison? Yeah. I mean, if JSN had played in that game,
exactly.
they probably would have won that game. But so Kyle McCord, Devin Brown, I think right now it's McCord's job, but Devin Brown's talented. Basically, I mean, we don't have to really dive too much into this other than the fact that kind of what I said earlier, you have big name blue blood programs trying to figure out who their quarterback's going to be. And I'm sure that these coaches like Saban, Smart, and Ryan Day are losing a lot of sleep over this type of thing. And then Texas, I think a lot is being made with them, with Quinn Ewers versus Arch Manning. I don't think Arch Manning will get on the field this year, but if Ewers struggles or if he gets injured again like he did last year, those fans are going to be wanting to see Arch Manning because they know how great he is. And then I didn't put this on here, but Tennessee kind of in a similar situation as Texas, really the exact same situation with Joe Milton being the guy for them. Arm strength is not a question for him, but you really don't know other than a handful of games last year if he can be a great quarterback throughout the season. And not Arch Manning, I'm just mixing teams right now. Nico, last name I can't pronounce, is waiting right there in the wings too.
Yeah. So I guess I just real quick want to give my thoughts on these schools. It'll just be real quick. But
sorry if I'm talking too much. I feel like I'm just like talking. And then like, Tyler.
No,
I'm pumped up. I haven't talked football in a while, so
yeah, exactly. Get it all out. You still have 40 days, but Georgia and Ohio State, I think, are both in a little bit of a better position than Alabama when it comes to their relative unknowns at the quarterback position. Just because Georgia, I mean, you could win a game with me at quarterback at Georgia right? I mean, they're just so physical, so talented. Their defense against the lesser teams is going to give up like 3 points a game. So I think that they're fine. They just need. I mean, Stetson Bennett was a little underrated, I think, towards the end, and
Yeah, I'll give him credit too because I wanted.
now that he's gone, I can give him credit, right? Like,
Yeah,
I can stop being
exactly.
a complete hater. He was a little underrated. He's a solid quarterback, but I think that any just bland, basic quarterback play is still going to be good enough to be a really good team at Georgia. And then I think that Ohio State has probably the best receiving core in the country. And so that's going to help out the quarterback quite a bit, whoever it ends up being. Versus at Alabama, it's kind of, if the quarterback play is bad, I don't know if the rest of the team's going to be able to rally around against the more top teams. So.
Yeah, because last year it was the opposite with Alabama. How many times did Bryce Young bail us out?
Right.
And you're not going to have, presumably, I mean, you're not going to have any one of these quarterbacks on the roster, I don't think, is capable of doing that. So, sorry, I'm flipping through these. I've got to get these Tyler Transfer Portal trivia is our next little segment here. And I got to find the page on here where I'm
excited.
Really and test you. So hopefully you haven't done your research. I know.
No, I have not looked up anything. I know exactly one player that you're probably going to ask. So.
Oh, hot shot.
I will say while you're looking too about Texas.
Yeah, save me right now.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree that external pressure is going to be the biggest thing for them. I think that Quinn Ewers is going to be solid, and I like Quinn Ewers. I think he'll probably play his way into like late first round this year in the coming draft. But I do think that Arch Manning is such a big household name that all the boosters, all the fans, second Quinn Ewers does bad, they're going to call for Arch Manning. But I think that Arch Manning, I forget who said the quote, but the best way I've heard Arch Manning described is that he's a 5-star because he's Arch, but he's the number one player in the class because he's a Manning. He was, he had some good games, but overall he was kind of, his last senior year in high school was kind of disappointing. I think that people are expecting some Peyton Manning clone to come right out of the gate, and I don't think he's going to be that guy. But maybe he is going to live up to the hype.
All right. I can't find it right now. I don't know where it is, so I'm just going to go off the top of my head.
All right.
Sam Hartman.
Sam Hartman. Oh, shoot. I have no clue. He was at Wake Forest, right? So
we're off to a great start.
Right. Okay. Hit me with it.
I got it.
Okay.
Sam Hartman went from Wake Forest to Notre Dame.
To Notre Dame? Interesting. He wanted to keep the same color scheme, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So you're 0 for 1 right now.
No, I'm going to be like 0 for 75. So
Devin Leary was at NC State. Where is he now?
I don't know. I want to say like he's also going to keep the same colors and go to like Stanford. Was it
Kentucky?
Kentucky. Oh,
yeah.
No. Okay. I did know that. Yeah.
And I'm starting with these two guys. I feel like they could also, more so with Hartman, kind of creep into the Heisman conversation. They both were pretty good on teams that, Wake Forest and NC State aren't known for having great quarterbacks. And Kentucky, you're replacing Will Levis, so the standards are going to be high there. Even though he wasn't very good last year, everybody knew who he is, and he's a household name. So Leary, I think, is going to step up, and he'll be pretty good for them pretty solid. I think they have a better team around him this year. And then Hartman was really good at Wake Forest, and he'll have a lot better weapons around him and just an overall better team at Notre Dame. So figured I'd start with those two guys.
Yeah.
Thought Hartman would be easy, but
see, this is just going to make me look like I know
absolutely nothing. The next one is going to really just put you in the spin cycle. All right. Cade McNamara, Michigan, former Michigan 5-star quarterback, still in the Big Ten.
He's still in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Okay, is this a team that's like it's currently in the Big Ten? You're not like
no. I'm not messing with you.
All right. I'm gonna go with Wisconsin.
Iowa.
Iowa.
Yep, Iowa might actually score some points this year.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, this just makes it look. This makes me look really bad. By the way, they're like everyone watching is like, oh my god, this guy knows nothing. But I swear, at least one of them after you said it, I've been like, oh yeah, I knew that.
I'm actually just being a bad co-host. I should have split this up and kind of alternated. So if you can think of some off the top of your head to give me, I won't look.
The only one that I was prepared for was DJ Uyunglele.
Well, I'll ask you that once. We'll give you a little layup.
Oh, okay. He went to Oregon State. Go Beavs.
There you go. I'll give you an easy one. Shedeur Sanders.
Shedeur. Oh, okay. Yeah, he went to Colorado.
All right. So you're back. You're back at 500 right now.
I got two right. Oh, I did want to real quick though. Shout out DJ Uyunglele getting drafted by the Los Angeles Dodgers in the 20th round of the MLB draft. And I looked it up right before we started to see, if there's even a chance. The Dodgers president apparently said that he believes that one day he will be in their system. So who knows? And apparently they talked to him last year before he transferred, like after his season with Clemson, about like trying out baseball again. So they must really like him for some reason.
Well, he's an LA kid, so
yeah.
I don't, maybe down the road. People, same thing about Kyler Murray when he got drafted.
But he got drafted like what, number 7 or something, 6?
Yeah, he got drafted really high, and there's a big question mark with DJ right now. I think personally he's going to have a great year at Oregon State. Oregon State won like 9 games last year without him. The Pac-12, I'm pumped about Pac-12 After Dark this year. Absolutely pumped about it. And, it doesn't take much to get me pumped up about Pac-12 After Dark. I'll sit and I'll watch Arizona versus Arizona State at 2:30 in the morning with quarterbacks that I don't even know who the hell they are. But this year, I think as a conference, it might be the most loaded conference at quarterback. You've got DJ at Oregon State. You've got Penix at Washington. You've got Nix at Oregon. You've got Caleb Williams at USC. And that's just off the top of my head. Shedeur Sanders at Colorado. Yeah. You've got a lot of exciting quarterbacks. Some of those guys I just listed, I wouldn't be surprised if 3 or 4 of them went in the first round or next year's draft, which just sounds crazy, but because it's the Pac-12. But Pac-12 After Dark.
Yeah.
It's going to be an this year.
All right, what else you got?
I'll hit you with a Bama one. A random, I won't say random.
I know which one you're going to say, actually, I think. You're going to say JoJo Earl?
No. I'll give you that one,
went to TCU.
Okay.
That was a weird one.
Javion Cohen.
Cohen.
Bama, interior offensive lineman.
Oh, didn't he go to Vanderbilt?
Come on, Tyler.
What was it?
Miami.
Should have known. Should have known there'd be a Miami in there.
At least you're hanging around 500 right now. So
no. I see. I was thinking. We took Tyler Steen and we gave back Javion Cohen. So I was thinking that'd be a fair exchange, but I guess not.
Travis Hunter
went from, I don't even remember where he was.
Colorado. Oh, actually, I just gave you the answer. Jackson State.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I
Okay.
completely blanked on the fact that he was the number 1 cornerback. I was like, I had not watched a lot of Jackson State last year, so I kind of forgot about him, even though it was kind of a huge deal that he went there in the first place. That one I would have known if I would have remembered who you were talking about at first.
I'll give you a couple more ones that are challenging. Actually, you might get this one. Spencer Sanders. He's part of a nice little trio of quarterbacks at a certain school, and we're not really quite sure who's going to start.
Give me a conference.
SEC.
Spencer Sanders in the SEC. I don't know. Oh, did he go to Arkansas?
Who does Arkansas have a quarterback?
I don't know, man. freaking what's his name? KJ Jefferson. But
Yeah.
I was not a big KJ Jefferson believer. So
Any more guesses for this one?
no, was it Vanderbilt this time?
Ole Miss.
Okay.
Jackson Dart, Spencer Sanders, and Walker Howard.
All right, this is just getting more and more brutal.
All right, one more. Let me pick a good
I've been
one.
my brain has just been overloaded with names. You're saying names, and I'm like, who is that?
I think, to be fair, I'm absolutely a psycho, and I just follow this stuff religiously.
Well, so like I follow it all religiously when it happened, but then since it's been such a long time since the off season, like everyone initially transferred. Once the season starts up again, I'm start watching and seeing names and stuff, and then I'll be able to recognize it. But
the transfer portal is a crapshoot. The only reason I know a lot of these players where they went is because I listened to shout out Late Kick by Josh Pate 24/7 podcast 3 times a week. I mean, they're dropping episodes, so I try and stay up to date. Obviously, it helps too for podcasts and stuff of that nature. But yeah, I'm a psycho. I won't do any more of these.
No, hold on. Give me a couple more. You have a couple more. We can go real quick. Well, give me like 2 more. I'll see if I can get one.
Do you know who Denver Harris is?
Yeah,
A&M stayed in the conference.
Stayed in the conference. Denver Harris
At a school that that would give it away.
Okay, I'm trying to think.
A school that's hot right now in the conference.
A school that's hot right now in the conference.
In the SEC.
In the SEC. Is it LSU?
Yep. There you go. That'll be huge too for them. I was gonna say a school that's known for developing cornerbacks, but I thought that would give it away.
Right, and Denver Harris was one of the like mass exodus from all the players having like attitude issues or whatever, right?
Oh yeah, really great player, but bad attitude at A&M.
So, I remember he was a huge Bama target a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
All right, give me one more.
I feel like you know this player, Tanner Mordecai.
Okay.
SMU quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Where
did he go to a Power 5 school?
Yes.
Tanner Mordecai, SMU. Okay.
A Power 5 school with a new coach.
Power 5 school with a new coach.
Big Ten.
Okay, Big Ten. I'm trying to think of what Big Ten.
There's a couple of schools that fit that.
Oh, is it Nebraska? Did he go to Nebraska with
no
Matt Rule?
Oh, other one.
It was I don't remember which. Okay, just hit me. Yeah.
Wisconsin.
Yeah.
All right,
we're just gonna pickle the Cincinnati guy. All right, so I went like 0 for 7.
I just made you look bad. I'm sorry, I did not mean to do that. I'm a terrible co-host.
I swear, I actually kind of know some things about football, but not, I guess, who transferred where. That was kind of hard. I feel like I'm the Charles Barkley of this podcast. You ever see those where he would always they'd start the season and have them guess where players went to what teams?
Yeah, and I'll give you the benefit of the doubt too with the transfer portal. So, but yeah, we're just gonna kind of.
I understand how Chuck feels now.
Oh, you can get me back. You'll have plenty of time to get me back another one of these shows. You can come up with some random thing, and I'll sit here and I'll take the heat from it.
You best believe I'll have one next week.
Oh God! All right, so the last thing we're going to talk about is kind of some coaching hot seats and potential new hires at schools. The 2 hot seat coaches that I thought were made the most sense to me was Jimbo, obviously at Texas A&M, signed all those great 5-star players last year, were horrible. Coming off a year where they did beat Alabama, although they almost beat us last year too, but we don't need to talk about that. How do you feel about Jimbo? Do you think he's actually on the hot seat? Do you think they bounce back? I won't say how do you feel about Jimbo because a lot of people don't like him. How do you feel about Jimbo at A&M as far as job security?
I think that he's been on the hot seat for 3 or 4 years now. And so I start to question how much he actually is. But that being said, they brought him in to win a national championship, and they haven't even come close recently. So I do think that his seat's getting a little warm. But the problem is, who do you replace him with? right? If you're Texas A&M, who do you go out and get that's definitely better than Jimbo Fisher? Or do you think that you just fire him and hope that the next guy is better, right? I do think that he needs to show a little something, especially if they paid him a bunch of money, right? He got a
Yeah, his
huge-
buyout would be like $80 million or some absurd number. So I don't think it would make much sense to just flat out throw him the wolves. And I think this year they'll be better with they bring in Bobby Petrino, offensive guru. So I think that'll help them out a lot. I see them having a bounce back year. I don't know how many wins they'll come away with, but they'll do a lot better than last year, which isn't saying a lot, but
The problem is, like, unless they're in the playoffs or really close to the playoffs, I still think that's kind of a failure of a season for a team that's had, top 5 recruiting classes all of these last couple of years and nothing to show for it. So I don't know. I do think he needs to start performing a little bit better, or else I do think that he is on the hot seat. I do think that he should, like, the team should not be as bad as it was last year for how much talent they have on it, right? And that's kind of been the theme since he's got there. So
yeah. I also just realized that for whatever reason on Facebook, I'm just broadcasting for myself. So I was wondering why there weren't Facebook people in here, and it's because it was on private. So,
well, they can catch the last 5 or so minutes.
yeah, the last 5 minutes after we just went for a full hour.
They
but
didn't see, guys. I'm really good at transfer portal. Like, I know where everyone went,
Yep.
and so if you have any,
So really, you don't have to get me back because I got myself back in a way. Yeah, we're gonna roll with that. Anyways, if anybody's in here, hi, welcome. We've been going for an hour, and I'm an idiot. But the next guy on the list, we're talking about coaches that might be on the hot seat, and then we're gonna finish up with coaching hires that we like. And the next guy for hot list would be West Virginia's Neil Brown.
Okay, so why do you think he's on the hot seat?
He just hasn't really. I mean, West Virginia is not a school you're expecting a lot from a national standpoint, but they have just really, really sputtered, and they've been pretty competitive the last couple of decades. Before Brown was there, so I think he's a guy that the school is expecting a lot more from, and if they don't make a jump this year, I don't think they'll have any problems letting him go, and maybe they'll bring in more of a household name because West Virginia, they used to be a really good program, and they've really fallen off. Kind of reminds me, Virginia Tech's the same way. These schools, even though they're not in, conferences where you expect, championships. I mean, for the Big 12, we're used to Oklahomas and Texases, and I mean, maybe West Virginia comes and takes the mantle after Oklahoma and Texas moved to the SEC. Who knows? But I think he's on the hot seat, and they need a big season to be able to keep him. Otherwise, he's probably gone.
Yeah, I mean, he's been there 4 years now, and his best record was 6-4.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, not much from him. So, not really. Wouldn't really be too shocked if he got fired.
Also, fun fact, just looking up the Liberty Bowl. Apparently, the first game of the Liberty Bowl was in 1959. Penn State beat Alabama 7-0. So there you go. There's some trivia.
We are,
but yeah, it's one of those things where, like you said, they're not going to compete on the national standpoint, but they've had some respectable teams, some respectable players over the years, and 5-7, 6-7, 5-7, 6-4, especially being 3 years removed from a 10-win season, a few 8-win seasons in there, consistently. Let me put it this way: the last 20 years, besides 2013, where they went 4-8, all of their worst records have been with Neil Brown as the coach. So yeah, it's kind of when the Jimbo conversation got brought up. Yes, do you just hope the next guy is better? And I think in this case the answer is yes, because it's not like
You can't get much worse.
Right, exactly. Oh, what do you win 4 games instead of 5? Darn. But I think that if there's no major improvement, you do kind of have to roll the dice for something better.
We've been going for a while, so I'm just going to pick 2 right here, and
Okay.
we'll talk about them. On here, we have Hugh Freeze, Deion Sanders, Matt Rule, Trent Dilfer. Obviously, Hugh Freeze is at Auburn now. Deion's at Colorado and Rule's at Nebraska. And then Dilfer is at UAB. The 2 I want to pick before we cut the show short is Hugh Freeze at Auburn and then Matt Rule at Nebraska. I think Hugh Freeze is a great hire for Auburn. I didn't really understand the Harsin hire. It was a bit of a head scratcher. And I think Hugh Freeze is a guy that they're going to kind of lean into. And I can see the program, the fans, the boosters, everybody loving him. And he did some great things at Liberty. And I think he has had Alabama's number in the past, so I think that's a good hire from them. And I don't want Auburn to be a horrible team. Obviously, I want Alabama to beat them, but I think the better the conference is, and I've said this, you can go back and find old clips. The stronger the conference is as a whole, the more it benefits Alabama. So I like that hire for them. And then Matt Rule at Nebraska was a guy that turned the Baylor program around in 2 years, went from like 2 wins to I think 10, which is absurd. Obviously went on to NFL, didn't have a lot of success with the Panthers, which is something we see a lot with these college guys jump into pros. He's now back at Nebraska. And we were talking about earlier, blue blood, historic programs that were used to being, top tier. I think he'll turn around that program pretty fast and start pumping some talent back into Lincoln.
Yeah, and I actually was a huge fan of the Matt Rule hire. I think that I thought he would be a little bit better in the pros than he was, but some people are just cut out to be college coaches because
the pros is such a crapshoot.
Right, and it's nothing. It's not saying that he's a bad coach or anything like that either, and it's not even a direct 1-to-1 where, if you're a good college coach, you can be a good NFL coach. It's 2 completely different styles, right? You look at Nick Saban, and I think his team was like 500 the 1 year he coached for the Dolphins, and then went back to Alabama, is now the best coach of all time. So I do think that Matt Rule has kind of shown that his style fits college a lot better, and I'm excited to see. I know they also didn't they get a big name quarterback commit right when he took over?
Jeff Sims.
Yeah, so
I'm from Georgia Tech, who's a good quarterback.
Yeah, I'm excited that Nebraska theoretically is going to be better. And Auburn scares me because I think Hugh Freeze is a more competent hire than even at the time. I didn't really get the Brian Harsin hire. He was at Boise State before, I think.
Yeah,
just not an amazing program anyway. But I think Hugh Freeze is going to do some solid stuff. I will say, real quick, Deion Sanders, I'm not a huge believer in. I could be completely wrong, but I think that at Jackson State, he didn't have to coach super well because he was able to pull. He's a great recruiter, great personality, great mentor for these kids, right? Don't want to take any of that away from him. But I think that at Jackson State, he was able to pull in such big talent by being such a good recruiter, and you can't really out-talent your opponents in the Pac-12 like you could at Jackson State. So I think that he could end up being a really good coach, but I do think there's going to be some growing pains for a year or two.
I think that's all I got. We just went for an hour. Obviously, we got some kinks to work out for the show. Definitely not ideal that I had just going to myself on Facebook and not going to my friends or being shareable. So I'll take the blame for that. Y'all missed Tyler just go absolutely crazy on
it was like that scene from The Hangover with him seeing the numbers, except I was seeing players in the transfer portal.
Oh, yeah. But that's all for tonight. Thank you, anybody who tuned in. Remember to like and subscribe us on YouTube at Super Bowl Sports. Also on TikTok, too. I'm going to be posting clips from the show and trying to kind of generate content in as many ways as possible. So, Tyler, you have anything to add before we call it a night?
No, man. I was glad to be back. Happy to do it. And we'll see you next week, I guess.
Yeah, and I think this show has a lot of potential with guests, and I already have somebody who's pretty big wanting to hop on and join us. So Tyler and I have some things to discuss. But everyone have a great rest of your week and hang in there. It's almost the weekend. Have a good night.